Ladies and gentlemen, the war at home over the women's bill is paling in comparison actually to the war that is raging in the Middle East for the last 45 days. Question is a major escalation on the cards in the next 15 minutes or so? Well, President Trump's naval blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz kicks in at 7:30 p.m. India time, which is roughly 11 minutes from now. So the countdown has begun, and so have the threats and counter threats. Essentially, the US Navy will be blocking any ship, any tanker, any vessel coming or going from any Iranian port in the Strait of Hormuz. How many Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz? Around 10 of them. The US Central Command is saying that any vessel that is entering or departing the blockaded area without authorization is subject to interception, diversion, and capture as well. However, there has been a clarification. The blockade will not impact neutral transit through the Strait of Hormuz to or from non-Iranian destinations. Needless to say, this is the single most difficult assignment for the US Navy in the Middle East in the last 45 days. Its armadas and warships and fighter jets have already been deployed in a move that actually aims to cut off funding for Iran's military operations. Iran reportedly is charging $2 million as toll for each ship passing through its waters. Trump is calling this extortion and says that the Navy is locked and loaded for the blockade.
Navy is underwater, you know that. 158 ships are gone. Their Navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil. And that will be very effective. But what we want to do is we want to, and again, we don't need it. What we notice and what we see and what I think is maybe my idea, maybe not, I don't know. But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait.
But the Iranians are warning if their ports are not safe in the Strait of Hormuz, then no port of any other country in the region will be safe. They say the American blockade amounts to piracy. They're also warning of prices of Brent going through the roof. The blockade brief came after the weekend talks with Iran collapsed. Iran's ambassador to India is saying it is the US that is to blame for this collapse of talks.
We are ready for peace and we are ready for war, but we prefer the peace. And we entered in the negotiation for taking away every excuse and every pretext. But unfortunately, they broke off the table of negotiations and they attacked Zionist regime and United States attack to our country.
Ladies and gentlemen, interesting to note that the naval blockade of Iran is coming at a time when the ceasefire is actually holding up pretty well. A blockade is an act of war. Does that mean that the ceasefire between Iran and America and Israel is now dead? Question also is, who exactly will enforce this blockade, which will come with its own set of complications? Will it just be the United States of America? Well, President Trump has said that other countries will be involved as well, but hasn't named anyone. For its part, the United Kingdom has refused to help. Australia has said it hasn't been asked. Spain is saying the blockade makes absolutely no sense. And China, the largest importer of Iranian oil, is criticizing it. Publicly, Israel, America's partner in war, seems to be the only one supporting the blockade as of now.
אני שוחחתי אתמול עם סגן הנשיא ג'יי די ואנס. הוא צלצל אליי ממטוסו בדרך חזרה מאסלאמבאד. הוא דיווח לי בפירוט, כפי שעושים אנשי הממשל הזה מדי יום, על התפתחות המשא ומתן. במקרה הזה, הפיצוץ במשא ומתן. הפיצוץ בא מהצד האמריקני שלא היה מוכן לסבול את ההפרה הבוטה של ההסכם לכניסה למשא ומתן על ידי איראן. בעצם ההסכמה הייתה שנוצרים את האש ואיראן פותחת מיד את המצרים. הם לא עשו את זה. האמריקנים לא היו מוכנים לקבל את זה.
My guest this evening, as the countdown begins for Iran's blockade by the United States, Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, joining us on the broadcast. Good evening, sir. Good to have you on the show. Peter Kuznick, back on the show with us. He's an author. He's a professor of history, joining us on the broadcast. Milad Rabbani is a former Iranian diplomat, joining us on the broadcast. Good evening to you, Rabbani. And thank you very much to Ambassador Jeffrey Gunter, who's a former diplomat of the United States, joining us on the broadcast as well. Jeffrey Gunter, can I start by asking you, what exactly is the United States of America hoping to achieve from this naval blockade, given the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is almost non-functional?
It's absolutely brilliant. What he's trying to accomplish, the President of the United States, the greatest president we've ever had, and my dear, dear friend, is what he said all the way along. No nukes, no nuclear capability, no missiles on offensive ability capability, keep the Strait of Hormuz open and prevent any help from any of their proxies, the Houthis, Hamas, or Hezbollah. It's all the same objective. And the reality is he called their bluff. They said, well, everyone's at risk if they go through the Strait of Hormuz. And President Trump said, no problem. We'll just shut it down. We'll do a naval blockade. It puts the pressure on the regime. It is another stage in the war of attrition. In the war of attrition, you take out their war-making capabilities. You take out their war-making manufacturing abilities, and you also take out their political leadership, which the United States and Israel has done eloquently, precisely, and tremendously.
Jeffrey Gunter, can I then ask you, is the President of the United States of America putting in a blockade to freeze a strait that in any case is non-functional, to shut a strait that in any case is shut?
Well, he was very specific. He said what ships will get through and which ones will not get through. He's obviously putting a blockade on who? A terrorist regime that is holding their own people hostage. Who and how do we know that? Because 45,000 innocent Iranians have been slaughtered by this terrorist regime. So I hope my fellow panelists understand that what President Trump is doing right now is freeing an entire nation, or attempting to free an entire nation from a bunch of genocidal terrorists. And that's what's going on here. And it's good for the region. It's great for peace-loving India. And it's a good thing.
Milan, would you want to come in here, please?
Thank you for having me. Genocide and killing innocent people is convicted everywhere. And but when I see the incident, the blockade of the Hormuz Strait, as an international expert, I believe Trump is experiencing the international relations became an experimental event for Donald Trump. I believe by blockading the Hormuz Strait, this will not happen, that the Arabian country can use those the Hormuz Strait, and the Iranian regime, they be unable to use it. When it is blockade, it is blockade for everyone. And Trump has sent some impulses that they want to supply the oil of the world even by the American resources and Venezuelan, I believe, resources. Now we see the puzzle that why first the Trump attacked to Venezuela, and after Venezuela they came to Iran, because they wanted to have the resources for replacing the oil from the Middle East. And I believe Donald Trump calculated this one. But what I don't understand, honestly, is his tactics in Iran. I think it is full of ambiguity, and by letting the Ghalibaf stay and seize the power in Iran, Donald Trump will gain nothing absolutely, because there is no regime change, as he claimed there was regime change. No, absolutely, it's a lie. There is no regime change, and without regime change, the conflict will continue, and we will not be the de-escalation of the conflict.
Rabbani,
we will see the conflict.
Rabbani, can we just get back to the point? Trump argues, and the Americans are arguing, that the Iranians are charging a toll of $2 million for the passing of every ship via the Strait of Hormuz. And this money is the one that is funding their war chest. So if we squeeze their war chest and the money coming into their war chest, obviously their military capabilities go down. So that is one of the stated objectives. In that sense, it may make some amount of sense.
Are you asking me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, exactly. And the term Donald Trump used about that was extortion.
Correct.
It's an extortion. It's a sea piracy, and that's correct. But, you know, I mentioned before that the Iranian regime doesn't care about its people, and they want their resources. Okay, they don't care. It is extortion or with money laundering. They want money because it's a war, and they know how to provide this money, and they use any means that they can. And yes, it's a tactic. And now it is one of the negotiations point in the Hormuz Strait. But I believe, as my experience, this is not what can destroy the negotiations. What can destroy the negotiation is the Iranian regime. They will not leave their nuclear programs. If they leave the nuclear program, just put yourself in their place. What do they have to tell to their supporters? There is a minority of people, their supporter, and they have the power. So what have they for them as a news feed? What do they have as a propaganda? So they will be loser.
Okay, give me a moment here, because as we speak, it's 7:30, which means officially the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz has kicked in. Will it escalate from here on, Peter? Is that what you think? Do you think that this is President Trump shooting in the dark? Do you think that on day 45 of the war, if a U.S. if a blockade has to be imposed on the Strait of Hormuz, clearly the war is not going President Trump's way?
No, I think Trump is in a desperate position. He's losing on all fronts. He's achieved really none of his objectives here. But if you look at the broader picture, he's even more desperate. Vance went to Hungary. Orban got slaughtered in the election, which is a premonition of what's going to happen in November to the Republicans in this country. And Trump knows that. He's in a bubble. And he acts crazy, like he's crazy, but he knows what is happening because the Republicans are putting pressure on him to end this war. But so the negotiations in Islamabad failed, and now so he's trying to find something to do. But you look at the crazy; he's so crazy, it's shocking right now. He goes after the Pope. He's in a war of words with the Vatican right now. He's posting images of himself as Jesus. At the same time that the U.S. is a laughingstock internationally. Jeffrey might be still on Trump's side, but he's getting closer and closer because there's nobody else there. You know, his own base. If you look on Truth Social, Trump's own platform, and the analysis of the comments there by the MAGA people has more than 50% of them condemning this war and sometimes saying, well, I voted for Trump 3 times. I'm never going to make that mistake again. So you look at what's going on right now. Trump is in a desperate position. Is this going to make a difference? The United States can blow things up. The United States can impose blockades. But a blockade is an act of war. That's why during the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy said he's going to blockade Cuba, but he called it a quarantine because he knew that a blockade was an act of war. So the U.S. Congress, if Trump is declaring war, needs to get in there, and they need to either through Article 25 or some other measures control this guy because he's out of control.
Okay. Ashok Sajjanhar, last word to you because I want to get in the Indian perspective. Today, after 7 years, Iranian oil on 2 super tankers has reached Indian shores. Now, they may be the only two in the last 7 years. Maybe we don't have more coming in, given the naval blockade by the United States of America. But I want to ask you if this blockade impacts India at all, given that the Strait of Hormuz, for all practical reasons, is shut.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shreya, for having me. Always a pleasure to be with you. I think this blockade impacts not only India, it impacts the whole world. If you permit, I'll just want to make 2 points. One, there is a bit of confusion and lack of clarity in what Mr. Trump is trying to do. He says that all those that are coming from other ports than Iranian ports will be allowed to go. But the $2 million that is being charged is on tankers and ships and vessels that are coming from other ports. So, and he's also made this argument that those ships that are paying $2 million, I'm going to seize them. So, you know, there is huge confusion there. The second point is that as far as the Iranian oil that is concerned, you know, that will not be allowed to go into the international market. But very, you know, just a few days ago, he had said that all the Iranian oil, which is on the high seas, should go around and people can pick it up. And even as far as the Russian oil is concerned, that should also be made available to all countries who want it, because we want the supply of oil in the world is coming down because the Straits of Hormuz are closed. So here he is sort of, you know, acting against his earlier decision that there should be more oil coming into the international market. The last point I'll make here, Shreya, is that basically it is Iran which has, you know, closed the Strait of Hormuz. So, you know, they're trying to put the blame on the United States. Now, United States is trying to open in some way by pressurizing Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think it is a workable method, but the whole world, including India, needs to get together to put pressure on Iran that the Strait of Hormuz should be open, because the whole world is suffering. And what Iran is saying is that if my ports are closed, like Bandar Abbas is closed, I'm going to hit Dubai, I'm going to hit Qatar, I'm going to hit Kuwait and all. That doesn't make sense.
But Ashok Sajjanhar, the fact also is that Iran very clearly today is saying if our ports are not safe and our shipping is not safe, then no port in the Gulf region is safe and no shipping from anywhere is safe. So are we looking at an escalation from this evening, from 7:30 onwards? Possibly, yes. We'll wait and see how it plays out. Thank you very much, Ashok Sajjanhar, for joining us. Peter Kuznick, thank you very much for your time here on the show. Milad Rabbani, thank you very much for being here. And Ambassador Jeffrey Gunter, thank you for your time as well. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, a quick break. There's some more news on the other side. Do stay with us.